All right, there we go. Just move that. Okay, welcome everyone. It is May 18th, 2020. You're here with me, Matthew Brownstein, the founder of the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. And tonight we are going to go in depth into what is interpersonal hypnotherapy. I was saying before we started, just to fill a little bit of time, that for some of you who are here tonight, this will be a review. Anybody who's been through our training or who's graduate, who's in the student or graduate, will find some of this a little bit repetitive. I'll try to get through that as quickly as possible. And then we'll have 3 PowerPoints tonight. One is about the school, one is about the association, more or less, and then one is about interpersonal hypnotherapy itself. There will be principles here tonight that graduates will definitely appreciate knowing, and anybody who's gone through the training certainly will. So hang out with me if it's a little bit repetitive, and I'll be happy to take you through this. At any point, feel free to use the chat pod, say hello, or most importantly, ask questions if you have them, or just ask to go into specific topics. Just a very brief overview before I move through this PowerPoint. I started these classes again, about less than 2 months ago after COVID-19, was clearly staying with us for a while. And it was a way to open up to connect to community again. So that's a lot of what we're going to see here with interpersonal hypnotherapy and the project I launched last night. I'll just mention it now. Maybe we can just screen share on it later. You can go to the new website called onlinemonastery.com. Last night, I officially launched for this next round of dissemination of those teachings what's called the Anahad meditation system. And it's exciting to be putting that out there. There were over 100 people in the room, which was nice to see. We actually didn't realize we'd have that many people, so they couldn't get in the room. So this is a smaller group tonight, so feel free to ask questions. And with that said, let's go through the topics. All right, so what is interpersonal hypnotherapy? Largely it's about connections, right? If you think of the word interpersonal, it relates to the idea that we're people. And unfortunately during COVID, a lot of hypnotherapy is having the shift to online, and we're blessed that we have that. But think about when's the last time you get to hug like a group of people? And when we bring people into our school, it's really beautiful to connect. When students come in for in-house practical hours or for annual conferences, we're just waiting for a client come and sit in your room. So we're all adapting, right, to this new world. Yet again, as I said, starting these Monday night classes again, and a huge part of why we do the school is because of people. That might seem really obvious that hypnotherapy should relate to person-to-person relationship, and I think that is obvious. Yet interpersonal says a lot more about what's happening once you start actually working with your client. You have in hypnotherapy what we call our conscious mind, of course, and we have the subconscious mind. And hypnotherapy still makes that division, which is really valuable. What we find is that it's not just about the relationship between you and your client, it's your relationship between you and your client's conscious mind, but also their subconscious mind. And once you get in there, you discover there's all these people, if you will, living in the subconscious mind. It's an entire, this might not be the most scientific statement, but I want to say it's like there's an entire other person in there. And the more you start looking around, you notice it's almost like there's other people in there. We're not talking about dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. I'm just saying there's different aspects of people's psyche. And in hypnosis, we'll often, in hypnotherapy, we'll call those subpersonalities or parts of the psyche. And these parts are often at war with each other, right? They're in conflict. One part wants to stop smoking, the other part wants to keep smoking. One really wants to lose weight, but the other actually wants to keep on the weight. One wants to get over depression, but one actually wants to be depressed. And it's not always just a one-on-one conflict, 50% here, 50% there. You can have multiple parts in conflict with each other. So a big part of interpersonal hypnotherapy is really getting to the very root of what's happening and then transforming it beyond just hypnotic programming. There's a very deep layer of working that we'll get into tonight. Question is, where do we find the audio homework you gave us? Which one is that? I've searched that site. Oh, you're talking about the online monastery site. I'll just say it quickly because this is a recording for another topic, but the online monastery site, if you're doing that meditation system, just click on where it says Anahad meditation and start devouring the information there. Anybody who just heard about that, feel free to check it out if you're interested. Just follow the instructions on that website. Okay, wonderful. All right, I'll come back to that later if didn't answer your question properly, since we got a different topic here. And connections. So I put in this slide for the idea that we are so much more than just bodies. In interpersonal hypnotherapy, and let me actually say how that came about, the title, the name. I've been doing hypnotherapy since 1997. I opened our school in 2007. We grew into multiple states. We've done trainings all over the country now. And at some point, it was probably around 2012 or so, I was in meditation and I was asking my inner guidance, wisdom, higher self, spirit, whatever you might call that. I was saying, what really is hypnotherapy? What's the real essence of it? And I said, it must be transpersonal, because of talking, not even as if, but like talking to higher wisdom. And I said, it must be transpersonal, right? The essence of it is to bring people to spirit. And that seemed like the right answer, and it is the right answer. Yet the voice, the inner wisdom, came back and said, it's not just transpersonal, it's interpersonal. And that made me really think about, like, what does that mean? And spending more time meditating on it. Hypnotherapy isn't just about me bringing my client through their issues and into light, into peace, into joy, into their true self. It's very much, and so that's what it is. Yet the role of the hypnotherapist is extremely important in that, right? I can't bring someone there if I'm not there myself. And that's a lot of what one of our guests tonight was asking about our online monastery.com website, the Anahat meditation system. That's one way, definitely not the only way, to tap into the light and the love and the peace that you are. So a big part of interpersonal hypnotherapy is to be in that space when you connect to a client. Then the interpersonal connection becomes very sacred. So one of the subtitles of this work is honoring the sacred in transformational relationships. And yet tonight we'll explore really deep into, I'm hesitant to use the word psychology because we're not psychologists, yet there is just the mental component of what's happening in hypnotherapy, so we're calling that psychology. There is a lot going on in there, and a lot of traditional hypnotherapy doesn't go as far as we're going to go tonight when I give you the explanation of what interpersonal really means in the sense of your client and you, and the place where you come together, and what you have to do inside of your mind and their mind to come to a place of true healing. So the model here is that all healing happens in relationship, and therefore it honors just how important the hypnotherapist really is. Yet there's a lot more to help you to understand why we're using the word interpersonal. Okay, next. I wrote a book, of course, called Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. If you haven't read it, especially if you're a student in our school, I would highly recommend it. It's short, it's easy, and most people find it very enjoyable. So there's our title, Honoring the Sacred in Transformational Relationships. There is, in case you don't know, some of our graduates obviously just don't know or they're not doing it yet, there's a CEU course. It's available on this website and all of our websites. You can find it, interpersonalhypnotherapy.com, the IAIH website. It's a 22-hour continuing education course that takes you very deep into what interpersonal hypnotherapy really is, and it gives you a certification as an interpersonal hypnotherapist. That's really for our graduates who have 500 hours already of state licensed training, but it's important for people to know that's available if they want to go really deep into this. So we're going to go through a little bit of history to help you to understand hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and interpersonal hypnotherapy. Again, for some of you, this might be review, yet I hope you'll enjoy a little journey into history. There was a man named Franz Anton Mesmer. He lived in the 18th century. It started in Vienna. Eventually, this image you're seeing of him probably was done in Paris. A lot of the later half of his life was spent in Paris doing this work. Mesmer was a physician, and outside of his regular studies, he was studying with a Father Maximilian Hell, or Heel, H-E-L-L. I've never heard it pronounced by a Viennese speaker. So Father Maximilian Hell, and he was rubbing magnets over people's bodies and believing that the power in the magnet could rebalance you could say, the energy flow of the body and bring about healing. Mesmer started trying this, and he was actually getting good results. And this went on for quite a while. He was becoming more and more popular. Eventually, one day, Mesmer goes to do a treatment, but he realizes he forgot his magnets. So he said, well, I believe the animal magnetism, as it's called, or as it was called, is inside of him. So he said, maybe I can just use my hands. And he started doing the magnetic passes over the person's body and talking, by the way, right? It's not necessarily done in silence. In fact, Mesmer is a very charismatic figure. So his presence, and this is, if you're thinking about what is interpersonal hypnotherapy, again, you have at the time you might say mesmerist, but this is the original mesmerist, Mesmer, or the hypnotherapist, which that term didn't exist yet. Mesmer, the mesmerist, is healing the other person. And so it does honor, if you really dissect what was happening in the day of Mesmer when he was doing these healings, it wasn't just the patient, if we want to use that term, sitting there with magnets, right, or rubbing magnets over their own body. Mesmer was there doing something. And eventually he learns, I don't even need the magnets. I can get the same exact results, excuse me, which would include quite often the altered state of consciousness we now call hypnosis or trance. And it induced the altered state, but it brought about healing results. So Mesmer became quite famous to the point where he couldn't handle his patient load, and he started taking these big vats of water called baquettes, so I'm not sure I pronounced that right either, filled with electric iron filings. And supposedly they were magnetizing the water. People would get together, they would hold the iron rods and the ropes that would come out of these things. They would hold hands, and supposedly the animal magnetic current would flow through the group. People would cry, they would laugh, they would have catharsis, some would pass out, and others would have no response at all. Yet, for whatever reason, I think now we would say that's largely psychosomatic, healing was occurring. So now you say, well, what is the role of the mesmerist in that, right? And obviously he had to give the suggestion that something was happening, but the suggestion wasn't just because he said it when he walked in the room. His reputation, especially when he went to Paris, had preceded him, and even Marie Antoinette, all the way up to royalty, had known about him. He was studied by Ben Franklin, Joseph Guillotine. There was a lot of people heard about this guy and wanted to know what he was doing. So his reputation was actually a big part of what made him successful, right? People's expectation of what's going on. So we in the hypnotherapy field have studied Mesmer a lot. And, I certainly have. I've read everything I can about him, saying, how did it work? Why did it work? Because most historians, hypnotherapists in the field believe it wasn't because of what Mesmer thought. A long story short with this, the scientific delegation, there are 5 doctors, 5 scientists who studied Mesmer. On the scientific side, we had Benjamin Franklin. And on the medical side, a famous name is Dr. Joseph Guillotine, the one who invented the guillotine. And they concluded Mesmer is not healing through any magnetic fluid. And they were very reasonable at the time, scientific tests, to say, according to them, this theory of animal magnetism just doesn't hold up. But something is working. And Ben Franklin concluded that with 4 words: the power of belief, the power of imagination, the power of suggestion, and the power of imitation. And imitation is important because it means that the patients would come into the rooms, whether one-on-one with Mesmer or in these big gatherings, and they would imitate what others would do. Right? So if others started laughing and crying, you might find the person next to them starts laughing and crying. If you're in this field, it's important to understand that the influence of the practitioner over, we use the term client in this day and age, so the practitioner over the client, or what's set up before they even walk into your office. And so Mesmer was not getting to the root cause of problems. He wasn't doing any real, what we might call, analysis or any real transformation. It was really just based on this power of this animal magnetism, or if you really think about what he set up and people's expectations on what could happen. This is obviously a huge history, so no 5-minute explanation does justice. Yet, if you're really understanding our field, you want to understand Mesmer, and I would encourage you to read up on him for sure. Because Mesmer was not well accepted and actually quite ridiculed, Mesmerism fell out of popular favor. But in 1864, Dr. James Braid, who was using some of these techniques, realized, this stuff does work. We just have to make it more scientific and palpable for medical doctors and scientists, people who can actually use this state to help to heal people. So Braid concluded you can get all of the same results that you get from this idea of animal magnetism just through the power of suggestion. And therefore, he changed the whole name of mesmerism to hypnotism, or hypnosis, based on the Greek god of sleep. It's a bit misleading using the idea of hypnos, the Greek god of sleep, because hypnosis is not sleep. And what's important to understand about this phase of history is that Braid and his contemporaries didn't understand about root cause of problems. They're still working to treat symptoms. And to understand interpersonal hypnotherapy tonight, it's really important to grasp the idea of, are we treating symptoms or are we getting to root cause? Because once we're at root cause in interpersonal hypnotherapy, we're seeing it different than most hypnotherapy trainings would acknowledge. It's just, I believe we've been able to evolve this over time. All right. During the time of the origins of all of this, there are two major schools in Paris. There are mental institutions. One was in, I haven't taught this in a while, one was in Nancy, France, and the other I think was in Nice. But either way, there are two mental health institutions, and some of the names of the people who ran that became relatively famous. Dr. Charcot is one of them. And anyway, again, I don't give this history lecture too much. The important points here are that Sigmund Freud actually started studying at these places, and Freud learned hypnosis. A lot of psychoanalytic theory is based on Freud's conclusions. And as you know, I'm sure you've heard the general history of psychoanalysis, that Freud was really like the god of psychoanalysis. And if he said it, Freudian analysts were pretty well dogmatic about his conclusions. So Freud was using hypnosis, yet when you hear later on his conclusions, he wasn't a big fan of it. And that's really for a few reasons. One is that Freud would not have a good ability to build rapport. He couldn't really connect with people, and we see that evidenced in the way you picture Freudian analysis, where the patient is lying down kind of in the chaise lounge, right on the recliner, and the analyst is sitting behind them, analyzing them, not looking them in the eyes, not connecting with them, treating them like a patient, as a doctor, and really just analyzing the subconscious. But again, lack of rapport. So that was one issue with Freud about being able to really do hypnosis well. He also concluded that the power of suggestion just doesn't last. You can trust post-hypnotic suggestion. So if you say to somebody, you are now, oh, and by the way, this picture goes into a whole history of the way they treated women and the idea of hysteria, but that's not tonight's topic. But it's a fascinating part of the history, and thank God we've come further as far as understanding that hypnosis is a model of equality. Not one, they used to use the terms in the olden days, like way back when, probably even before this, during the times of the Mesmerists, that a more powerful soul had power over a weaker soul. And we do not acknowledge, we don't consider that being true at all in modern hypnotherapy. Okay, so what's happening, Freud is talking about why hypnosis didn't stick for him. He didn't have good rapport. He actually, I believe this is true, I believe he used a lot of cocaine, and they would rub it on their gums at the time, so he had really bad breath and teeth falling out. I mean, that's what I remember from the history books. And it gave him really bad breath, so it's hard to sit in front of someone either and talk. Yet really what happened is he started understanding analysis by regressing patients to the root cause. And the one thing he found, which was probably shocking to him, was shocking to me when I got into this field, and I still see it like frequently. I see clients now, a little bit more during COVID times, just to be nice, and I'm still seeing it, to this day. And what I'm saying is, Freud was regressing people, especially women, to the cause of their problems, finding out they were sexually abused. And his contemporaries, all these guys who are probably doing things they shouldn't be doing, it's so prevalent that when I say that, I know that doesn't sound like I'm not giving you exact data, but from my experience, a very large number of, a high percentage of clients have been sexually abused. It's more prevalent than I think most people realize. And Freud discovered that. He started sharing that. And, we know a lot of Freudian theory is based on that most issues have something to do with sexuality. And a lot of that has to do with childhood sexual abuse, but nobody wanted to hear that at the time. I don't even know how much people want to still hear it today. So for that major reason, he dismissed hypnosis and getting back to the root cause as something valuable because nobody was going to take that up at the time in that way. So he designed analytical theory and basically just put hypnosis aside. That put a big dent in our ability to actually use hypnosis to help people to heal. And also what's important, even though he was uncovering memories, they didn't really know what to do with them at the time. They hadn't developed the techniques that we have now to heal the content that is brought to consciousness. So hold that thought as well about using regression to get to the root cause, because again, Mesmer and Braid and those early founders were only using it to treat symptoms. At least Freud was starting to look at root cause. Dave Ellman is well known in our field, and Ellman was he called himself a lay hypnotist. He didn't consider him, he wasn't a doctor, a dentist, he didn't call himself a hypnotherapist, but he was a real enthusiast of using hypnosis, and he started actually training dentists and doctors and anesthetists. And he knew all about symptom relief and pain management. He was very good at pioneering deepening techniques, but he founded something called Hypno Analysis. And when you hear, and our students get to, some of the earlier recordings of Ellman, you just hear someone who's doing the best he can with what he's got. But compared to what we have now, it's actually kind of sad. But it's good. He was helping people for sure. It's just, again, this is about in the 1950s or 60s, I believe. So what Ellman did was, again, he was a pioneer, like a lot of these people we're talking about. He developed what's called Hypno Analysis, and they would put people in hypnosis, regress them back to the root cause. Yet when you hear Ellman, it was basically the idea that just knowing the cause of your problem was pretty much enough. Right, so I remember a case of, what was it? It was a woman, I believe, maybe it was present-day headache, some type of present-day symptom. They regressed her, and she had, I believe it was like hay fever, some type of childhood sickness. And the child got very scared of having this kind of sickness. And some of those, the memories, the belief systems, the emotions remained, and it kept, even though she is healed physically of the illness she had as a child, it kept physical conditions going. In the regression, you hear him saying, now that we know that this is what happened, right, you don't have to have those feelings anymore. You don't have to be sick anymore. And, and I'm not saying it didn't work, like that worked. Yet there's just so much more we would do now than just tell the client, well, we found the root cause. Now at least you know the root cause and you can let it go. What's misleading there is most people actually know the root cause of their problem. When you come to a hypnotherapist to find out why you have present day issues, you don't necessarily find repressed memories that you didn't know were in there. You quite often will make connections, like Ellman did in that case, connections you didn't know were there. Like, wow, I didn't realize my headaches came from this. And so that's helpful, but what's important to understand is knowing the cause of your problem does not heal your problem. Once we bring that to consciousness, we need to do something with it. And again, that's where interpersonal hypnotherapy becomes a really powerful model. And again, it's going to be different, our approaches, than what you might study in a lot of other places. Gil Boyne, my most significant mentor in hypnotherapy. Gil, that's a picture of Gil with Hypnos. And I want to say, actually, I was very pleased one of our graduating classes gave me one of those statues as well. So someday I want to take the same picture. Gil was a real pioneer in our field. He was a hypnotist. He did a lot of stage hypnosis, and then he became quite a leader in the field of hypnotherapy itself. He was definitely into the regression model. And yet the thing that really brought to this was he had studied with Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, where you dialogue between key characters, and this will come up a lot tonight. You dialogue with key characters, inner regressions, right? Here's the inner child, here's mom. Let's say mom hurt the child or didn't help the child to feel better, and now they are talking it out. The Gestalt model is really powerful, and to understand interpersonal hypnotherapy, we want to understand what Gestalt is. Gestalt literally could be translated as oneness, or that which is whole. Not necessarily that which is coming together, like uniting, but that which is already whole. The example I like is water, being H2O. You have two hydrogens and an oxygen. You separate them, you don't have water anymore. You put them together, you have water. Water isn't already in a state of Gestalt. So when we're looking at the subconscious, like I said earlier with that picture of all the people, it's not that there's just a conscious mind. You have a conscious and a subconscious, The subconscious is a mind. It has thoughts, feelings, memories, emotions, imagination, belief systems, and there's a lot of division in there. One part of the subconscious might believe one thing about you, like, hey, you're a good person, and the other might say you're a bad person. The bad person belief is going to have emotions and behaviors, and the good person belief will have emotions and behaviors. That kind of conflict can be really destructive to a satisfactory life. So when we have the parts gestalt or talk it out, we can facilitate them coming into a place in that model, maybe just of teamwork, right? Where we're going to agree, hey, Joe is a good guy, and he can feel happy, and he can have healthy behaviors. So Gil is a major pioneer of utilizing Gestalt in regression. And as far as I know, he was the first one to really do that. So kudos to Gil, thank you. All right, so what do we know about all this? You have this slide, the evolution of the root cause, classical hypnotherapy. So what are we doing in most classical hypnosis or hypnotherapy? And in case a lot of you don't know, let me define some of the terms a little. Hypnosis would just refer to that natural yet altered state of mind that we utilize, not to fully define it now. Or hypnotism, the word here on the screen, scientific hypnotism. Hypnotism really is just the scientific study of the hypnotic state. A hypnotist, the way I would define it, is someone who usually does not have a lot of training, usually not from a legitimate career school. So they might have a weekend workshop. You can become a stage hypnotist after probably a weekend of studying this stuff really well. Some trainings are longer, maybe 100, 200 hours, but you still have really minimal training compared to a true career professional. And then there's someone who's a hypnotherapist. You can have that title and not be properly trained. Unfortunately, the law in any state really doesn't cover that well. But I would say a really solid hypnotherapist does have 500 hours of training from a state licensed institution. So what would classical hypnotherapy be doing when they're working to help someone on the deepest level possible? Not that we couldn't just hypnotize them and give them suggestions or use other techniques. Some of the deeper work would involve inducing the altered state known as hypnosis. Like I said, you could give just direct suggestions to feel better. So instead of getting to the root cause of, let's say, a headache, and by the way, all medical conditions do need a medical referral from a physician. Just as an FYI, we cover that in depth in our training. So we could just give direct suggestions that the head feels better, and we could regress to the root cause of the problem, resolve the root cause, and then give suggestions. Now the headache stays away. And of course, if you remove the cause and the effect, it's going to be a lot better than just removing the effect. All right, so in modern hypnotherapy, there's scientific hypnotism. Not that we can't believe in the animal magnetic force, also known as Reiki or Chi or Prana or Shakti or Ki, or the Holy Spirit. That's, let's just say it's not in the field of scientific hypnotism, but I certainly believe there's a place for that in our work. It's just for it to stay more mainstream and scientific. We kind of have to keep that a little bit on the side, but it's not that you can't bring that into a really solid hypnotherapy practice. All right, then we're definitely regressing to the root cause, and anybody who's well trained in this, again, some trainings are not, they're not all created equal, I can tell you that. There's more acceptance by the mainstream and more each day, which is exciting to be in this field. And then we are very interested in this kind of work of finding what's called the ISE, the initial sensitizing event. That is where there's an idea, and it's beneficial. We teach it in our school, yet interpersonal hypnotherapy goes further than this idea. The idea of an ISE is that there's one root cause of your problem. When you come to a hypnotherapist, they'll put you into hypnosis, they'll regress you, and a memory will be brought to consciousness. And the memory becomes a thing we most focus on. Now, depending on your level of training, you need, like we looked at Dave Ellman, he didn't really know, Freud, they didn't really know what to do with these memories. It's not that they weren't intelligent enough or willing, it's just the techniques hadn't been invented at the time. So there are certain techniques that get applied to ISEs depending on how well trained the hypnotherapist is. And the whole model, of course, is resolve the root cause, and the effect will go away, especially if we know how to deliver suggestions or other techniques to help ensure that the body or the behaviors or whatever it is we're working to resolve follows. I noticed a lot of just talking and information, so those who are here in attendance, if you have any questions at any point, just go ahead and use the chat pod, and I will be happy to take a pause and talk to you. But for now, I'm just going to keep going. Next, so what makes interpersonal hypnotherapy unique? If you look at our logo for, this isn't the school's logo, this is the association logo. And last night I gave a very in-depth talk, 2.5 hours, on the Anahat meditation system. The symbol in the very center is called Anahat Chakra. I won't go too into that now, but again, if you're interested, check out onlinemonastery.com. The association logo has a triangle in the, well, obviously right there. And it's helpful to look at a triangle to understand this. You have two major motions, or movements is the word I used in this slide. You have a horizontal and a vertical. The horizontal is between you and another person. So if you're a hypnotherapist, it's between me and my client. But if you take that outside of a professional relationship, and if you're in just any relationship, that's between you and the other person, right? So if you're in a significant other relationship, there's you as the lover, your partner hopefully is the beloved, and the partner is a lover and you are the beloved, and you two are meeting in a space of love and connection. Hypnotherapy obviously is on the professional level, so we're not talking about that kind of relationship, but it's a very, I'm going to use the word, but I'm definitely going to qualify it, the word intimate relationship, not sexually intimate, that would be inappropriate, but what we're talking about is a connection between you and your client, which is sacred. So when I say intimate, I really just mean sacred, not sexual, of course, not romantic. We have very clear ethics about that. But what I'm implying is there is an openness of the heart of the hypnotherapist, and maybe a closed heart in the client because the client is dealing with a lot of issues, and usually that means they're suppressing emotions, they're closed down and blocked. It's our job to help to open them to that. Because remember the slide when I was talking about transpersonal and all the light coming out of the person? Clients don't walk into the office without understanding. They only want their symptoms to be gone. But we understand we're going to put them into what's in some ways a very vulnerable state of hypnosis. Not necessarily vulnerable psychologically, because there's no harm that comes from hypnosis. I mean vulnerable that that person is trusting you when they close their eyes and relax, that you're not going to steal their wallet or hurt them physically, right? They're trusting you to close their eyes in maybe the first time they've ever been to your office, and they're letting go of all defenses. They're just relaxing deeply into hypnosis and trusting that we're going to help them. So it's so important in this model that we train very ethical, professional, very well-educated hypnotherapists who are very skillful, who are measured in their core competencies, and really know how to help someone who are in that very vulnerable state in a very intimate setting. Because of COVID-19, a lot of hypnotherapy is happening online now, but the same principles still apply. There's obviously ways unethical people can hurt others, and we're working really hard actually with the IAIH. I'll show you some of that soon, very briefly. But to mention, there is a code of ethics. There are core values, and I don't think that should be taken for granted, right? There's a lot of people who do unscrupulous things, so we need high standards in this field for sure, especially with altered state work, again, for the reasons I mentioned and more. So the horizontal connection is between you and your client, and it honors how important you are in this equation, and that you know how to do your own inner work and heal yourself, and then you know how to bring the client to some of the highest states possible. The point of the triangle here, and this is not something everyone has to believe in, but I find it extremely beneficial, and most of our students are very open to this. You might call that higher point, higher self, superconscious mind. In hypnotherapy, we not only acknowledge a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, there is something we call superconscious. It's not a Freudian model of like the id ego and superego. It's transcendent to all of that. It has spiritual overtones. And to me, hypnotherapy, the way we teach it, really can't avoid the spirituality. For most of you, you're probably glad to hear that. I know I'm grateful that I have a profession where I can bring my spirituality into the mix. So the higher point there is the relationship between you, and you're thinking about, where's our cursor? Here's you at the bottom corner, and here's the divine at the top. Now, it's obviously an image on the screen. It doesn't imply where the divine really is. So it's not actually just up there, right? But that one reality, you can call that spirit or source. A lot of people, of course, are comfortable with the word God. Yet this model acknowledges a light, that there is something called light. There's something called love. And love isn't just a biochemical reaction. Right? Those of you who acknowledge reality called spirit, acknowledge there's this universal presence of peace, of love, of joy. and wisdom and guidance. So this horizontal connection between you and your source gives you intuitive abilities, psychic abilities, guidance on what techniques to use. And a lot of what I like to train our students is how to meditate and how to tap into that. Once you discover how valuable that is to you, then interpersonal hypnotherapy is not just to heal the client's symptoms, not just to get to the root cause of their issue, but to get them connected to that. Now, you don't preach, it's not dogmatic, it's not a religion, but it is saying that once you clear their closed heart and all the blocks in there, there's all this light and love inside of them. And I can feel it as I talk. I close my eyes, I'm like, oh God, I want everybody to feel that. It's like this beauty that moves through your heart. And if you don't have that as a hypnotherapist, you wouldn't feel inspired to bring someone to that. You'd help the best you could. But once your heart is open and clear and you know how much love can be in your being for no reason at all, just like, because that's spirit and it's everywhere. When the client gets to that place, you just look in each other's eyes, and when the session's done, there's just almost no words. It's so beautiful. So part of, I believe, the job of an interpersonal hypnotherapist is to help the client to connect, have their connection to source as well. I mean, again, not as a conversion to a religion, but it's a direct experience in hypnosis that you move them through their pain and you say, okay, now how do you feel? And then we can use a simple technique to say, and what would feel better? And what would feel better? And next thing you know, your client is like really happy and they're filled with self-love, and then they're filled with like real incredible love. And then they say, wow, divine love. And we call this, a lot of you might know, it's called the core state, courtesy of Connie Ray Andreas, who founded a great technique called core transformation, one of the co-founders of NLP. And which is nice because the history of hypnosis doesn't have a whole lot of women. So it's nice to be able to give credit where credit is due. So she designed this technique and we use it in different ways, but I've certainly integrated it into our school's training, where almost any session you want to be saying, what would feel better? What would feel better? What would feel better? Until the client can't feel any better. And my experience of that is that's what's at the top of the mountain here, at the top of the triangle. When you and your client are connected with that, in the center is basically the heart. That's what Untitled Chapter is, the heart, a space of love. That is one of the most powerful experiences. In A Course in Miracles, there's a line. So imagine the client comes in with a lot of anger, a lot of hatred, really is what it comes down to in their heart. And you heal that through these kind of ways, this techniques and ways of thinking. Then the quote is from A Course in Miracles, the holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred has been transformed into a present love. And so imagine your office, or if you're doing it online, but the relationship between you and your client, the holiest place on earth. Now imagine like being a hypnotherapist and you're helping another human being in your office, which is so beautiful, or online, which can also be beautiful. The holiest place on earth is where an ancient hatred has been transformed into a present love. The connection between you and your client is so valuable. And I don't think that's taught as much as it could be. And then, of course, the idea that there is something higher, but not necessarily above, right? Just all pervasive that we can tap into, we can help our clients to tap into. So that's part of this idea of honoring the sacred in transformational relationships. Definitely a lot of emphasis on meditation and inner guidance. One of the best sources I can tell you to go to now is our new site, onlinemonastery.com. And the Anahat meditation system is something that's been with me. It's part of my life purpose, mission, to teach. And that's been around since 1996 is when all those revelations started coming to me. So I'm just going to say that. And then as far as inner guidance, our school has components that teach you about intuitive hypnotherapy, and there's a whole CEU course on psychic intuitive work. When you're really tapped in that way, you're getting guidance about what to say to the client, what techniques to use, what the client's issue is, what they're feeling before the client even tells you. And to be trained and to function on that level is not only very rewarding and beautiful for you, but you see real miracles occur because you're being guided by something much higher than your own conscious mind, right? If all you have is your own intellect to help a client, you're limited. If you have your emotional self, your heart, that's great, but if your emotional self is damaged, not as great. When you heal yourself more and more, right, it's an ongoing process, your heart is open. Your heart is very much your subconscious mind. When your heart is in a space of love, now you have that resource to bring to the table. Great training, great intellect, and a very open, clear heart. But then when you bring in the spiritual component, now you really are empowered with the idea of miracles. And I'm not using that term unconsciously, like I literally mean miracles. Shifts that occur in the mind that can absolutely make instantaneous change in the physical body. And that's not debatable. It's just a question that it happens. It does happen. It's just a question of how and why. And a lot of what we cover goes into that. All right, next. Core values. I won't spend much time on this, but like I said, it's so important that good training covers that. So these are some of the values of the IAIH. I won't read them here, but I just want you to know they exist. They're on our website, and they govern, all values and life principles. Should really govern anything that you do. So that's that list there for you. Ethics on our IAIH website. We have a very clear code of ethics that IAIH members are required to sign. And the good thing about that is not only does it hold our profession accountable, it protects you. So if you sign that and you're following all our protocols when you're in private practice, if you had some kind of issue or malpractice issue and the IAIH comes to your defense, we can say they signed the code of ethics, they're in good standing with the school, they have state license diplomas, they're using client participation and disclosure, what do we call it, a client disclosure agreement. You're doing everything properly by the book, proper note takings. We actually have in the IAIH now the need for HIPAA compliance if you're getting a referral from a licensed practitioner of the healing arts. So if you get a referral from a physician, then you're technically now a business associate of a physician, and you are bound by HIPAA law. We have a section on that on the interpersonalhypnotherapy.com website under advocacy in that tab. In case you don't know about that, you might want to if you're a graduate. All right, and law and legislative work. So we've done a lot of work to protect the profession. I won't go into that tonight, but you can explore that on the interpersonalhypnotherapy.com website. We monitor state law to be sure we know what the laws are in all 50 US states. And we work to protect hypnotherapy if it ever starts having an issue. And that can occur on the city level, county level, state level, or federal level. There was a lot of progress made with Gil Boyne and some other leaders back in the 70s where hypnotherapy actually became a legitimate profession on the federal level. And then some of us, not a lot, of leaders in the field on the state level have worked really hard with the state, especially with Department of Educations, to make this a legitimate career. And again, there aren't a lot of schools that do that. We're still the only one that I know of who's primarily out of Florida, but we have locations around the country now. But our license is held through the Florida Department of Education. And there's a few schools around the country, but most schools are actually unlicensed and actually therefore illegal and really not helping our profession to grow. So interpersonal hypnotherapy has those very high standards, including protecting it on the city and county level. Intuitive listening skills I mentioned. All right, here's a little bit more about interpersonal hypnotherapy and a difference between what we call the ISE and the ISR. And ISR is an interpersonal hypnotherapy term. So this is one of the major differences. And again, understanding this is really that extra 22 hours of training. And I'll go into it tonight with the time that we have, so I don't want to hold anything back. If you're not trained in this, you obviously can't or really shouldn't be trying to help people on these levels, but I'm not here to withhold information. So I'll cover as much as I can tonight about how we as interpersonal hypnotherapists can, I'm not saying all of our graduates do, or how that I do in every single session, but how we can facilitate a process which is so much more, I'm going to say glorious, than what I think a lot of hypnosis has been over a few centuries now. So a client comes in and we want to resolve their symptoms or their behaviors. They want to resolve them, we want to resolve it for them, and we can sometimes help just in that level. Hypnotic programming, neuro-linguistic programming, subliminal programming, visualization work. We can do basic things to change that. Yet if you don't get to root cause, obviously that stuff can come back. And if you are good at, and our graduates I know are good at modifying behaviors, if you have a client who has a very destructive behavior and you do powerful enough techniques to say you are not able to do that behavior anymore, your subconscious, you just can't do it. You just can't grab a cigarette. You can't do that drug or alcohol, whatever it is. If you didn't heal the root cause, that part who's trying to find comfort is going to find something else. Here's how it works internally. You might notice this because you're having the human experience. When your heart feels bad, you have negative emotion, do you notice how you turn your mind, well, you say you turn your mind, but notice how your conscious mind starts thinking about how to make this feel better, right? Oh, I'm so sad. What am I going to do to feel better? Now, as soon as the mind comes up, like, so it's like trying on different items of clothing. Well, we could do the alcohol thing. No, no, that gives us a hangover. Let's not do alcohol. We could do that drug. No, we can't get that drug. It comes up with all these ideas. We could kill that person. No, no, that's not a good idea. And by the way, anybody who's in prison or killed someone said, no, we can kill them. The heart said, yeah, that'll feel better. And then they acted on that. So what we do is we try on ideas of what makes us feel good. Once the two link up and say, oh, yeah, that's good, then we go, they're not good in the highest sense of the word, but that'll make us feel better. And then very unconscious people will act on that. When you don't let them act on that using hypnotic programming, right, you're not allowed to drink. Well, then the mind's like, okay, well, we're clearly not allowed to do that. So what else can we do? Because we still have all this pain inside. And as soon as they find that one solution, well, we could throw the bottle at our child, like throw the bottle of vodka at your daughter. All right, people have done this kind of stuff, obviously. That's because this figured out what to do to make this feel better. They were in agreement and action occurred. By only stopping behavior, you need to understand that inner part who's not okay is going to find other ways to feel better. So in our work, it's pretty much a requirement to get to the root cause of the problem. The root cause, as you can see, is rooted very much in emotions. The emotions are fueling all that conscious thinking. So the more you have mental chatter, your mind's not at peace, it's actually a reflection of your heart. If your heart's not at peace, your conscious mind is going to talk a lot. As soon as this is calm and clear and open and filled with love and peace, that doesn't have anything to say at all. You're like, wow, it's really quiet in here. You might get a little bored at first, but then you're like, wow, it's so much better. So you can have a quiet mind, a peaceful mind, but you have to clear what's in your heart. You can be in control of all these negative behaviors. We don't control them. You can resolve the root cause. So, most hypnotherapists understand emotion motivates behavior. We also acknowledge, and again, this is not necessarily novel, that beliefs cause emotions and cause symptoms or behavior. So if you believe that you're a bad person and it makes you really sad and scared and insecure and angry, you're going to act out on those beliefs and emotions that will become symptoms in your body and behaviors. Then what causes all those beliefs and emotions, right? So we know hypnotherapists, Freud, Gilboy, and these people knew, Dave Hellman, events cause the child's beliefs and emotions, which cause our symptoms and behaviors. And most of our self-esteem, which is pretty much rooted in the beliefs we hold about ourselves, those come about, the self-esteem is really well solidified by the age of 3 or 4. And most of these beliefs, when we explore them in hypnotherapy, are developing around the ages of 4, 5, 6 years old. Most of our regressions to childhood, we ask the inner child, how old are you? And you're 5 years old. It's very common. So the events are very early on. They're very young. The child's very young when this stuff is occurring. And now in interpersonal hypnotherapy, we're not just looking at the ISE, the initial sensitizing event. We're honing in on the key relationship rooted at the cause of the client's problem. Because let's say your dad, most of you can relate, say your dad was a cause of a lot of your problems, right? He did something, or lots of things, right? And say dad was alcoholic. He came home drunk almost every day. It's not one event with dad, but for most people, right, there's only one dad. In interpersonal hypnotherapy, that just becomes a really obvious thing to focus on, to not keep chasing down events, thinking if I just find the root cause one event, I will heal all these problems. Once you realize there's just a few, really only a few core relationships in the subconscious, then you're very empowered to collapse the whole card house. Again, most people are not thinking that way in the mental health professions or the hypnotherapy professions. And I'm saying, like, everybody kind of knows, you go to a memory, you're probably going to deal with a relationship. But the emphasis on this is so strong that it changes almost everything we do. Like when I work with clients, I know, because I practice interpersonal hypnotherapy, I have a very different approach in the way we talk about problems. And I'll explain that in just a moment with the next bullet point. Okay, so relationships become the real cause. So let's say you have headaches. And let's say they're caused by suppressed anger, held on to a lot of anger, bottled up in the system. Headaches caused by the emotion anger. Underneath that, we have the belief system. So let's say you believe you're powerless, trapped, and helpless, and that's causing you to be angry, and that's causing your headaches. Then, well, what's causing you to feel like you're trapped, powerless, and helpless? That's where the memories come in. We go to the events and we say, there was one event where somebody made you feel trapped, powerless, and helpless. And that's, again, what a lot of hypnotherapy looks for, the one event. And most people, kind of in there, I'm going to say their naivete, think if I can just find the one thing that causes these problems, I'm going to be better. So they go to hypnotherapist, hoping we can regress you to the cause, find the one memory, and clear it. The problem is when you have this alcoholic dad for your entire childhood who is verbally, physically, sexually abusive, it's not just one memory. So once we get into the memory, the attention becomes on dad. Now, again, it might seem super obvious, but it's not how most people practice. And here's what I said, it can be really different. You don't see the symptom of headache as a headache. There's nothing physical really happening. The body's responding, but there's no physical thing called a headache. It's a physiological response to, in this case, when it's psychosomatic, to an emotion. So we can say, oh, well, the headache is anger. Right? But really the headache is the result of anger from I am trapped, I'm powerless, I'm helpless. But really the headache is your anger at your dad, if we leave out the belief systems and summarize that shortly. So you don't see headaches as headaches anymore. In deep metaphysical philosophy, one of the most powerful principles is you translate things into thoughts. Translate things into thoughts. The headache is a thought. What kind of thought? An unresolved thought with dad in this case. Now, therefore, go to the next bullet point below. What's really happening in this issue with dad in the subconscious? You're really angry at him, which means you haven't forgiven him yet. And when there's no forgiveness, there's no love. Now, there's love underneath it all. Dad loves you, you love dad. It might be very buried in both of you, but it's in there, or in your client. So now, instead of translating things into the thought that, oh, it must be a memory, or even a relationship in the memory, what you do in interpersonal hypnotherapy, and then again, this is a huge leap. I don't think most people grasp just what happens in this one shift in the way you're seeing it. You see the headache is lack of forgiveness. You have to program yourself with that though, because it's just so easy to get caught up in all these other layers. I got to resolve the symptom. And I get emails all the time from students. What do I do about this condition? And then I usually just answer back with, follow your training. And then I have to remind them what their training is, because they're still thinking there must be a unique protocol to resolve this physical condition. You just treat it directly. How do I heal asthma? How do I heal allergies? How do I heal ulcerative colitis? How do I heal Crohn's disease? How do I heal trigeminal neuralgia? And go on and on, right? There's thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of diagnoses. But they're all on forgiveness in this model. Now, this model is really referring to psychosomatic illness. I'm not saying every illness is psychosomatic. I think a lot of them are for sure. And they can be healed through this work, and that's just been my experience. And all the behaviors are psychosomatic. So when you see that client who's turning to alcohol to try to feel better, the behavior, don't see it as alcoholism, see it as unforgiveness. And then in the ISR, the initial sensitizing relationship, we're just finding out where's the unforgiveness. When the forgiveness occurs and the client is brought back to love, and that usually can occur within a 2-hour really good session. We won't go into it tonight, but interpersonal, I'll touch upon it in one of the slides. Interpersonal hypnotherapy has a rapid resolution process, and it's usually done in 2 sessions. It doesn't mean I only see a client for 2 sessions, but if they have one issue, I pretty much apply 1 2-session rapid resolution protocol based on these principles. Now, if it doesn't work, it's not a panacea. It works a lot. If it doesn't work in 2 sessions, okay, we can do more because the principles still apply. And it's important to understand the headache. You don't have that many heads, right? You don't have that many kind of aches you can have in your head. So the headache could be the result of a few people who made you angry, right? The headache's the result of anger in this case, and trapped, powerless, helpless beliefs, but maybe mom made you feel that way too. Maybe Uncle Bob made you feel that way too. So now we're talking about 3 relationships, so maybe 6 sessions. But a client might invest under $1,000, I would think, depending on what you charge, to go through those 6 sessions, plus or minus whatever for the cost, but relatively small amount of money, to be free of all that, symptoms, behaviors, emotions, beliefs, negative memories, and unresolved relationships. So if you just focus, and everything is every problem is unforgiveness. And you just have to trust me on that, because this is a short talk on it. But this is from many, many years. Like, now it's been 22 years of doing hypnotherapy. And this stuff didn't come to me yesterday, but I can say over decades of evolving this, I still believe all this to this day. I still practice it to this day, and we still train our students into it this day. Yet again, a lot of our graduates are not doing the 22-hour interpersonal hypnotherapist training. And that's probably because I just don't promote it enough. I don't really like to be promotional, but it's super valuable. And again, if you can practice true forgiveness and lead people to love and heal all their issues, you've done a huge service to the world. To be a little biblical on you, not to be religious, but to quote a good book that said some good stuff. If you study what the miracles of Christ was doing, he said, all right, what was happening there? From a kind of scientific or neurolinguistic programming perspective, if someone else can do it, so can we. And if there's an experiment that's happening, right, if he's, not that we can actually study him in that way, like through true scientific method, but if you said, all right, a human being is doing something, and how can we do what he's doing? You just have to say, well, what are the principles he's using? And when you realize, like, every single miracle, he's saying, you are forgiven, then you have to ask, how much are you doing that with your clients? How many clients are you helping to ensure, right? When Christ is healing the blind, or all these different miracles, he's saying you're forgiven, your sins are forgiven, is kind of what they're hearing. This is, we'll get into this with other slides. So hold that thought about forgiveness, and the reason I hesitated there is the idea of guilt. It's a huge topic. We have some slides that will cover it. But this is the real essence of the work. It's not just about your connection with your client. It's not just making the relationship sacred. It's not just helping to heal you. It's not just your connection to source. It's not even just guiding your client to source, because that's a really nice idea. If you don't move them through forgiveness, they can't experience peace, joy, bliss, love, and oneness. So that becomes the real focus of the work. Let me stop for a moment. Are there any questions from those who are here live right now, or anything you'd like to share? I'll take a drink and give you a moment. All right, go ahead, type them if you got them, and I'll keep moving along. The rapid resolution protocols, I think there's another slide as well. Okay, as far as this goes. So what are we doing in these rapid resolution protocols? I actually prefer not to go too into the details in a live public class, but what I can say is, in the first session, we're using techniques to bypass the critical factor of the conscious mind, to gain access to the subconscious mind very quickly. We are doing an intake that is doing a very complete intake. Symptoms, behaviors, emotions, beliefs, and even finding there's techniques, which I won't go into here in a public class. There's techniques that we can help to find memories, and even the key character of a memory, sometimes within 5 minutes. So I teach what, I don't like the title, but I sometimes call it our 10-minute miracle cure. I apply that model in every first session. I'm not saying I only do a 10-minute session, but technically you could do that and you can see results. I've definitely done that in the appropriate context. With a client, yeah, you give them the full 2 hours that they deserve. You're not rushing, and it's a profession. So if you healed everybody in 10 minutes, well, hopefully you'd have a lot of clients to make a living. So, practically speaking, we see clients for 2 hours on average. And again, there's no rush, but this can happen very fast. To resolve somebody's lifelong headaches in 4 hours, which really can happen. I've done it. I've seen stuff happen even faster. I remember a session, I'll tell you a quick story. It relates to the idea of guilt. Client came in to stop smoking, but she was about to abort the session in the office because she said she had a cold and she couldn't focus. She couldn't go into hypnosis. She felt horrible. I said, you want me to help you to heal that? She goes, you can heal a cold? I'm like, yeah. She goes, okay. I took her through, the stuff I'm generally speaking about now. And after about 15 minutes or so, she says, I said, how do you feel now? She goes, I don't know. Hold on. She blew her nose. I swear, like everything came out. I never saw anything like that in my life. And she felt great, and it was clear. And then I put her into hypnosis. We programmed her to stop smoking. And she came back in the next week because we're doing a 3-session protocol. But in between that, after a week, she had referred God knows how many people after, curing the common cold in 15 minutes. And that happened. I'm not saying I could do it all the time. I'm not saying I can do it for COVID-19. I'm not stepping up to that plate, but that experience was real. When she came back the next week, she said, Matthew, that was like, she confirmed that cold was cured right then and there. And that involved, if I remember correctly, an ear infection as well, like right then and there. Your mind is so incredibly powerful. And I'm probably preaching to the choir for those who are listening about that idea. But I do want to encourage in the idea of performing miracles, of seeing huge physical changes happening very, very fast. It's important to remember. I had a thought. I was waiting for it to come to me. There it is. There's a show on Netflix right now. It's a magician. It's called Magic for Humans. Some of you may have seen it. He does an experiment, which you may have seen before, where you put a person sitting at a table, both hands are out, but you cover their left arm with a cloth and a divider, and then you put a fake hand there. And you kind of get them really embodied in the idea that, no, the hand you're looking at is your left hand. And you poke it with a pin, and they feel pain. Right? Now, that's not so shocking, but meditate on that for a moment. Think about it. Then he takes a half, he convinces the guy, like, I'm making you feel things that aren't, it's like a phantom limb pain. You're feeling things that aren't really even there. Then he takes a hammer and he hits the fake hand, bang, and the guy is, violently shocked. But every time he did these things, the person felt pain in that hand. Now, that's not news to most people, but it's a nice, simple Netflix demonstration of just how powerful your mind is. In A Course in Miracles, there's a line that says, most people just never, I'm paraphrasing this, quoting a little, but the idea is most people never remember the full power of the mind. Right? Your mind isn't just your brain in the small. Your mind is the activating agent of spirit. And spirit is the energy that's manifesting universes. And mind, capital M mind, is the divine mind manifesting all that is. You're part of that. Your mind is way more powerful than I would say most of us are giving credit to. Okay, so the rapid resolution protocols, we can uncover a lot of what we need to know in a very short period of time, apply techniques that allow those shifts to occur very quickly, with forgiveness being the essence of it, resolving guilt. So I mentioned the woman with having the cold and curing that so quickly, because when I got to what emotions or she caught up in that, it was guilt. And honestly, it always is. You might disagree, but that's just a difference in lack of explanation. Once I explain, which we'll get into during this class, when I explain guilt, you're like, oh, yeah, I see that. So it's in everybody. It's in you. It's in me. I've done a lot of inner work, but like everybody is beating themselves up in some way. And anytime you're angry at someone else, you're beating yourself up. You're annoyed, you're beating yourself up. It's all some form of upset, but any form of upset is an attack against yourself, and guilt is an attack against yourself. The guilty punish themselves. And if you're not feeling peace, love, joy, bliss, oneness, happiness, health, you feel guilty on some level. Now, again, don't dismiss that easily, because people want to dismiss that easily. The guilty punish themselves, and sickness is a great way to punish yourself. Abusive substances that, horrible for your body, is a way of slowly punishing you. You think smoking is pleasurable. I'm not talking just to you who's listening to me right now, but a client might think smoking is pleasurable, and they're confusing pleasure and pain. Like when I was a kid, I remember first sipping vodka. I'm like, what is that? This is a horrible thing. Cigarettes were horrible. My body knew that. And then I fortunately get into those things. But maybe because that response was so strong in a very sensitive system, yet people managed to override that response and convince themselves that toxic poisons are actually pleasurable. And A Course in Miracles, it's saying you're confusing pleasure and pain. All right, so let's just be aware of that. And again, underneath all of that, I'm going to, A Course in Miracles term, underneath all that insanity, meaning like attacking yourself thinking it makes you feel better, underneath all the insanity is unforgiveness, is guilt. So hold on to that idea as we move along. So rapid resolution protocol. First session is that kind of work. I can't explain all the techniques now. And second session is usually a hypnotic regression, or we'll use, I'm trained in rebirthing, holotropic breath work, and integrated breathing. So, bring that to our school. You can use breath work, and most people don't know what I mean by that. It's not what you do in a yoga class, but breath work done in this way can bring up the root cause of problems, sometimes in ways that hypnotic regression can't. And breath work has an amazing ability to rebalance the energy, if you will, that we talk about in Chinese medicine or animal magnetism, mesmerism. And so second session, usually a regression, or breath work, which is essentially designed to cause a regression to occur. Be sure you get to the root cause of the problem. Find the key character, the ISR, in the initial sensitizing relationship in the memory, and be sure you work towards forgiveness, eliminating guilt, and then leading the client into what we call the core state. Again, making sure they're feeling as good as possible. Maybe they don't always get to the core state in that session, but you really do need to have forgiveness and the return to love to say that the session was complete. You might skip certain steps on a protocol because of time, and maybe they're not blissing out in divine light, but they've come really far and they're beyond grateful for the experience. And as a career, to be doing that kind of work on a daily basis, and we can do that stuff online, until we can all get in our offices again with our clients in a safe way because of COVID, I can do exactly what I'm describing online. I prefer breath work because I don't have to touch the client. Some hypnosis involves touch and is more effective with touch. So this day and age with COVID, we can still do the protocols I'm talking about on the internet for sure. I do them to this day. Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate that. A word of encouragement. All right, moving on. Overgeneralization, transpersonal presuppositions. I've given some of those to you already. One is that we're spirit, that our true nature is light. Another is all illness is lack of forgiveness. All negative behaviors are lack of forgiveness. A very overgeneralization of the idea of guilt, right, that everybody's doing that to themselves. And overgeneralization, and here's a good one, there's only one problem and only one solution. The one problem, this is A Course in Miracles teaching, the one problem is separation, and the solution is oneness. The means to get there is forgiveness, and that's the means of the miracle. From separation to oneness. So separation is not that we're like physically removed from the universe or physically removed from the one energy of the universe, which I'm going to say is, like the picture kind of shows, is spirit, is light. Your body emerges out of that. It manifests out of that. It's not you manifest out of your body. Your body manifests out of the energy of the universe. And that energy is spirit and light and love. It's energy, right? Science says energy. But science can't feel it. But where is that energy? Well, it's right here. And it's like looking right through these eyes. It's talking to you. It couldn't be some other energy. There's not the energy of Matthew and then universal energy. There's universal energy. That's all there is. When you sit and meditate and you tap into that, you are that. Science can prove there's energy there. That's not debatable anymore. All right, matter's energy, E equals mc squared. So if I sit, when I sit, because I do every time, every single day, I sit in meditation, I tap into that. I know myself to be that. I know my client is that. I know interpersonal hypnotherapy is about us bringing the relationship back to that space of oneness. It's, again, not just your client who has to be brought back there. You have to do this level of work, you have to go there with your client, which is amazing. If you see 5 clients a day, which can be a lot, but that's what I did when I was in full-time practice, 5 a day, 5 days a week, about 25 clients a week. And most of those sessions, not everyone, you get to go to this place. At the end of the day, you're just in tears of gratitude. It's like, thank you so much. I can't believe I'm doing this work. This is like everything I've ever wanted to do, and you get paid for it. So it's so rewarding. But anyway, the overgeneralized transpersonal presupposition that all illness is lack of forgiveness. Forgiveness is the means of the at-one-ment, the experience of oneness. And oneness is oneness with universal light, universal love, universal energy. That sounds metaphysical, but make it a quantum physics statement. It's like just Einsteinian relativity or whatever. There's E equals mc squared. There is energy, and that one energy is the only energy there is. That one light is the only light there is, and we are that. Just science just doesn't feel it. They prove it's there. They intellectualize it. They have great theories and mathematics. But it's only those who really meditate. There's different ways to tap into it, but I would say meditation. Those who tap into it, it's like, oh, that's that energy. So I can't make that point enough. That a mystic, a deep meditator can feel the love of that energy. Science can only tell you the energy is there, right? But what you see in your client, the same energy in you is the same energy in them. It's pure love, and the way to return to it is forgiveness. When that happens, health is the inevitable result. In A Course in Miracles, it says peace is health. it's either true or not true. And my experience is that's very true. Okay, so that's a big part of the emphasis in interpersonal hypnotherapy. This goes through different topics. I'll go through it very quick. We use Bloom's taxonomy to structure our schools. Way we deliver the education through online delivery of knowledge, through online extra delivery of knowledge with live classes as well as recordings, testing to be sure you comprehend, application of core principles through hands-on practical hours, which right now we're having to pause because of COVID, but we're not stopping. It was one way or another. Our students must demonstrate core competencies. But anyway, the whole point here is a very clear educational system that works. Member-driven organization. I won't go too into IH now. That's one. Hello, everybody. Let me take a quick little pause. We'll go to full screen. I will open up to question, answer, discussion, and then I have I said I'd do 3 PowerPoints today. I'm just going to do 2 because of the way this is unfolding. And this is the stuff you may not have heard before. It's coming now. So I hope you'll really enjoy it. We'll do 1 other PowerPoint. I don't see any questions yet, but go ahead, start typing and I'll know. See it in there to pause. I'll start to introduce where we're going. In the 2015 IAIH annual conference, I presented this slideshow. It is in the Interpersonal Hypnotherapy CEU course. So I'm giving away really valuable information here in a public class. It's going to go on YouTube. So I'll just give a few disclaimers before we do. Again, I'm not seeing any typing yet. So one disclaimer is you shouldn't do hypnotherapy unless you're trained to do so. You really should have state licensed diplomas from a legitimate career school if you're going to do it. You should be certified by a legitimate credentialing agency, have signed a code of ethics, have real certifications and diplomas in the field. Do not work in medical conditions without the referral of a physician, and realize that we're not psychotherapists or mental health counselors. So when I talk about inner psychology, what I'm really just talking about is a deep understanding of the mind, and that comes from many traditions, but nobody here is claiming to be any form of psychotherapist. Hypnotherapy is its own profession, but obviously it deals with the mind. So right now we're going to start looking at some of the deeper psychology of interpersonal hypnotherapy. Okay, so since you guys aren't talking to me, I'm going to keep talking to you. Here it is. From the beginning. Okay. The journey from ego to spirit through interpersonal hypnotherapy. What a lot of, I would say, a lot of people don't seem to really focus on a lot is the idea that we have 2 different aspects of our being, ego and spirit. And my book, Interpersonal Hypnotherapy book covers it, but my book, Peace Under All Circumstances, has a whole section on if you want to be at peace. So again, the book is called Peace Under All Circumstances. I've made those teachings public, by the way. They're on YouTube. You can Google that term and maybe my name, but just that term, Peace Under All Circumstances. My audiobook is on YouTube for free now. I put that there during COVID because I'm like, wow, if there's ever time to let these teachings get out there, it's now. And then there's meditations, and I have a few more I need to post on YouTube at the time of this recording. Anyway, the idea in that book, but again, really in this work itself, is that we have a mind that can come from ego or that can come from spirit. The difference is huge. It's like you could say night or day, or really heaven and hell is probably the better way to make the dichotomy there, the division or whatever, the distinction. And let's talk about it a little bit. And I'm going to start with spirit. Spirit is, I'm going to say who you really are, and it's your true self. It is unchangeable. You can't, no matter what you think or do, you can change that. And that you is peace, love, bliss, joy, oneness, in touch with, as part of, like I was saying before, universal energy. You cannot be part of that. If we use spiritual terms, you are eternal. Energy, spirit doesn't die. You are immortal. Energy, spirit doesn't die. Unchanging in the sense that you're always peace, bliss, light, love. That doesn't go away. Now, the real question, a lot of you will know the answer, is how many human beings are living that way? Most of the time, we're not. We're living from the other part of mind called ego. And it's so important to realize that. In fact, I'm going to show you in this slideshow. Every hypnotherapy session is still rooted in ego. Unless you're really honoring, and I'm not saying only interpersonal hypnotherapy does this, but I kind of think right now a lot of, it's one of the few that do. Most hypnotherapy, and therefore in mental health counseling, psychology, it's still functioning from ego. I'm going to show you that. It's a bold statement, but I believe it's sincerely very true. And that's why, again, interpersonal hypnotherapy is its own unique thing. It's our own brand. And it's worthy of that. I don't want to be a pioneer in something new. I'd rather just do the stuff that works. But when I discovered a whole new way of helping people, I'm like, wow, I have to, just like the Anahat meditation system on onlinemonastery.com, I'd be happy to just teach Buddhism or Zen Buddhism or yogic meditation. Yet I found something that was in some ways even greater than what I had studied in these other traditions, and so I felt the need to teach it. Same with interpersonal hypnotherapy. So really hold that thought about why this is so unique as we move forward. So what is ego? Fear, false self, not who you really are. Scared, defensive, angry, feeling separate, feeling alone. Masquerading as something that you're not. Highly divided, attacking, murderous. And murderous is a really strong word, but that mind wants to destroy anything that threatens its very unstable foundation. It has no idea who it really is. It believes it was born when the body came about, but it dies when the body dies. It thinks it is the body, but it can't accept that because it's seen what the body is and realizes that this mortal, temporary thing that can get sick and die just isn't good enough for it. But it realizes, but that's who I am, so what can I do about it? What does it do with that horrible existential angst? It actually just suppresses the question from the mind. And if you meditate on this enough, you'll see it inside of you. The ego does think it's the body. It's the part of your mind who's very connected to believing I am body. And I'm everything that happened to the body. I'm powerless, I'm helpless, I'm useless, I'm bad, I'm stupid, and I'm unlovable. I'm dirty, I'm disgusting. I'm trying to remember all the beliefs. You hear all these from clients all the time. And when I point this stuff out to clients, like I'll look at a client's notes and I'll say, okay, here's what you just told me about you. Let's talk about why you might be having an issue. You just told me you're a pathetic loser who's incapable, not good enough, bad, stupid, dirty, disgusting, powerless, trapped, and helpless. Don't you think you're going to struggle a bit that you believe that about yourself? How many people are still living out of those beliefs? I'm willing to say 99.999%, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, right? And you'll see when we talk about even really good hypnotherapy, it's still utilizing a balance of the ego states is what we're going to talk about somewhat tonight. Balancing insanity with insanity isn't liberation, isn't enlightenment. And again, most therapy is rooted in the idea of helping to improve the ego, helping to improve the self-concept. The ego is a self-concept, but a concept is not who you are. A concept about a thing is not the thing, right? The concept of the water bottle to my left, I say water bottle, you don't know what it looks like or what it is. I'm seeing the thing, you're not. The concept about the thing is not the thing. Your ego is a concept about you. And even when you spiritualize the ego, as people who get on the spiritual path do, it's a deeper topic, but it's still ego, which is just like the false self is masquerading, as a Buddhist or a Christian or vegetarian or a Hare Krishna. I'm not saying these paths aren't legitimate and beautiful and valid. I'm just saying when the ego takes on this new identity, it still doesn't really know who it is. So no matter how pretty you make the ego, it's important to remember it's still ego. I had a teacher who said it's the, excuse the French here, it's the same bullshit spray painted gold. You can make the ego really pretty. You can make visualizations really pretty, but it's really important to understand that kind of work is not the deepest work we can do. Okay, so that's a distinction here, the journey from ego to spirit. So in sacred geometry, which again, my new website, onlinemonastery.com, goes into, and we'll go into it very deep through those teachings every Sunday night. So over about 4 months, it's just started last night. So it's a good time to look into that if you're interested. So here's a brief overview of that kind of thing. In sacred geometry, the circle represents spirit. It represents equidistant from all points, and all points are equidistant from the center. And spiritually speaking, it's saying we're all equal, we're all one. It's empty of a separate self. It is pure oneness. There's no division here. And it's timeless. It's really beyond time and space. But while we're having the human experience, it's actually very intimate with time and space. Just as I was saying before, the energy of all that is, and again, I'm saying that in a scientific way, like E equals mc squared, quantum physics. The energy of all that is the energy of all that is. That energy, before it's manifesting into form, can be represented in the empty circle. And it's pure potentiality. Anything and everything does manifest out of that source. So if you just think about black holes, or really just like the Big Bang, energy is black holes we see as like swallowing stuff up. But where does all that stuff go? Well, it's very plausible. A lot of scientists believe it's pouring out of the other side, right? It's creating other universes. But either way, we know universes, or this universe we know of, is clearly manifesting. And the energy that's manifesting it is the energy of it, right? It's not two different substances. Your chair is E equals mc squared, right? The chair you're sitting on is energy. Matter is really just energy. But it's important to grasp in this model that energy, and this is really, it's a powerful statement, but it's far from metaphysical, really, although it's very metaphysical. That energy is pure consciousness, and that's what the word I am means. It's right now in modern science, there is no explanation for where consciousness comes from. You can prove it through brain science. And a lot of the modern sciences, going into the really advanced quantum physics, are starting to acknowledge consciousness as one of the major dimensions of reality, because you just can't separate consciousness from the whole experience. Okay, so hold that thought as we move into the discussion here of who you really are. Consciousness, spirit, peace, bliss, love, oneness, energy, immortal, eternal energy. Again, how could it be anything else? So now, what happens when you, let's be a little biblical on you, what happens when you fall? What happens when the soul believes itself to be a child, when you feel like as if you come into a body? I'm not saying you drop down into a body. I think that's actually a myopic, a kind of naive way of saying it. It's like you just plop down from the sky, you fell from the clouds. But I am acknowledging you are a spiritual being, and I am acknowledging, and you could acknowledge, you've had, most of you are adults here, you had a child experience, right? Your consciousness identifies with your body, and you start saying, I am child. What happens in the mind, in this kind of forgetting process of who you really are, you don't come into your body unless you're like, Christ. You don't come into your body and just say, I am the light. You say, I need food, I need water, I need love, don't hit me, love me. You just become the child. You completely forget who you are. In that sense, you're an amnesia victim. And everything you're taking on during those formative years is your ego. That is, again, it's a divisive mind. It's a mind that feels separate from the whole. You don't ask a child, who are you? And the child doesn't say, I am the bliss of the whole universe. They forget that, and they give you their name, right? So again, it's a long discussion about egoic identification, but you all know what it's like. Ask your child, who are you? The identity is human. The mind is completely convinced it's a child. So in the formative years, what we in hypnotherapy want to understand is the mind develops what we call the child ego state. And when you're working with that part of the being, you have an emotional mind. You have a mind that's very influenced by its own imaginings, right? The subconscious, this is very much a subconscious mind, very primitive. You have an image in your mind, imagination. You have emotional responses to that. You're not really rational. You just want to feel good now. Children have very little sense of delayed gratification. Again, anybody who knows children knows this, so not such a mystery, but I want you to not see it as the child's body. See it as mind, because every client who walks into your office has this mind. We all know about the inner child, right? You have to understand, though, if you want to go very deep in this work, the inner child is ego. I know you love that little person inside of you, but please understand it's not who you really are. When you felt like you became a human being, you developed the child ego state. And then we'll talk about the evolution of that, the development of that through the years. When you grow up, now you got your adult mind in there, but now you're like, oh, I have a little inner child, and he or she, let us say she is usually really sad and really hurt and really scared and feels very angry and feels guilty and is hiding and is suppressed and is shoulded upon and told, you shouldn't feel that way, you shouldn't be that way, those desires aren't okay, that you want that, that's bad, that's sinful, right? Don't underestimate what's going on in there. So that's not just the body anymore. You want to see the circle on the screen is that spirit, but in the middle where it says child is actually ego, right? We call it the child ego state. And that's not really debatable in really good different forms of therapy in transactional analysis, which is largely what I'm pulling from now to understand the ego. We have three major ego states that we're going to look at. So a lot of this work does come from transactional analysis. Let me Make the camera smaller. Child and parent. During the formative years, the child ego state is learning from society, specific, most likely from the parents, and it starts taking on the parent's voice in the head. Anybody who goes through our training knows about this. We call it the inner parent, and usually that's considered the inner critic, is the child says, I want ice cream. Parent says, no, you shouldn't eat ice cream. I want to pick my nose in public. No, you shouldn't pick your nose in public. What happens is the wanting creature moves, and then when it's inappropriate, which quite often, excuse me. Now you see the water bottle. Advertisement for Shakeology. Necessary recovery drink. So anyway, when the inner child is wanting, oh, I don't see the chat pod, by the way. So if you're anybody who's here live is typing, I apologize. Let's get that back in the screen just in case. Okay, I can see if you want to. I can see what you type if you want to. So the inner child is the wanting part of us, and the inner parent is a voice reflecting the outer parent. So the child says, I want to do this. The parent says, no, you shouldn't do that. And then if the response of the parent is very vocal, very vicious, very punitive, then the inner parent voice becomes a very destructive voice in the mind. Child says, well, but I want that. Parent says, no, you shouldn't do that. That suppression mechanism is guilt, right? And now, how many people have an inner critic and an inner child? Well, like every single client who walks into your office, including everybody who goes through our training. Unless you have radically transformed your inner being through this kind of work, you have this inside of you, and every client has this inside of them. It is ego. It is, again, it's divisive, it's destructive, it's not who you really are. If you have a good, healthy parent, it'll be better, but you still have other voices. It's not only your parent voice, which represents the parent. It's the kids at the bus stop. You walk to school and you're wearing the wrong clothing and they pick on you for wearing the wrong clothing. Well, next time you go to wear that shirt again, I'm speaking from experience, the inner bully jumps in and says, oh no, don't do that. Right, so the child said, but I like that. And then the protective, it's actually trying to protect you. Their protective voice says, no, you shouldn't do that. But the child is coming from a place of joy. And the inner critic, the inner parent, that voice that tries to socialize us and get us to fit in, often has to suppress that. Oh, that's goofy, that's silly, you shouldn't be that way. Don't say those things. That's not appropriate in society. I can go on, but please understand, this division is inside of, or this dynamic is inside of everyone. All right, same basic slide. Oh, no, the model here, I haven't used this slideshow since 2015, but the teachings are all the same. I haven't really changed my thoughts on this much at all. The reason the circle is so big is it's actually showing a dominant parent ego state and a highly suppressed inner child. You might be able to relate to that. These are people who really live by major shoulds. They're usually very depressed, often very anxious. They can be very defensive, very protecting. They're not in touch with their emotions. And in a sense, they're living with a very vocal, pathological inner critic. Lots of ways you should be, and very little joy of doing what you want to do. But again, everybody has this to some degree. Then what happens as we start moving through our life, we have the parent-child conflict that happens inside of pretty much all of us, and it'll be there until the adult ego state starts to form. The parent-child becomes more subconscious. It's in there, you're just not as aware of it. And then you as the adult start developing, right? You start having adult thoughts, usually around, I'm gonna say around the age of 13. People know, it's like, oh boy, they're 13 now. They start developing their own individual sense of self, trying to rebel against the childish way of being and rebel against the parents controlling. But who are they really rebelling against? Their own inner self. So you develop this conscious mind adult ego state, which is ego. And then in the subconscious, in the heart, you've got all the child's buried emotions of sadness, hurt, fear, guilt, anger, shame, and all those negative beliefs. Plus you got the inner critic in there, the inner parent, which is more than one voice. The inner parent is very much the voice we look for with the ISE regressions. And we're always looking at the inner child in those regressions. And now we have the adult ego state. The adult can be the mediator to the parent-child conflict in really good regression work. So it's important to understand, well, in this picture, we're talking about a balance of these ego states. In transactional analysis, they're not, I'm going to make the camera a little bigger. I think that's nicer. The balance of this is really the goal of really good therapy. You know, most therapy is about, in transactional analysis, get a balance of these ego states. But balancing three insane minds is really not much of a balance at all. Now, but I say insane only because when you think you're anything but divine light and love, it is a form of insanity. Right? And again, there's like Course in Miracles ways of thinking when I use those terms, not like my judgment or clinical assessment. The ego is an insane mind. And here are three insane minds. Now you say, but my inner child, like she can be such a happy, wonderful, good girl. And my inner adult, as my inner critic, has been transformed as being like a nice, loving voice now. And my inner adult is pretty well functional. Why are there three of you? And why is one of you only 5 years old? And why one of you just as a healthier version of your mom and dad? And why is one of you, the adult, feeling somewhat disconnected from all of that? It's progress. If you've been making progress in that in hypnotherapy, I commend you. But please know it's not the end result of really good work. It is really good work to get the mind balanced like this. But again, interpersonal hypnotherapy goes deeper. This is where really good, when I say therapy, you know, I'm not referring to any one path. I'm just referring to anything that helps to heal the mind. If you could get your client to this state, happy inner child, raising self-esteem, inner parent, and really functional adult, you got a really good human being. But how many human beings are functioning at this level? You know, maybe 10%, I don't know, but you're not the majority. Next. Here's some of the imbalances you can see. The dominant child, I'm not sure, again, I haven't used this slideshow. Let's jump ahead for a sec. Okay, yeah, I didn't think I was going into all the imbalances. So this picture represents a dominant child, suppressed parent, which is actually usually not so bad, or in a smaller inner critical voice, and a pretty healthy adult here, assuming, you know, these states are healthy. So this person in the picture would be a dominant child. There's a lot of wanting running the show. So this person might be more tempted to use drugs or alcohol. They're not good with delayed gratification. They probably are in debt. They're probably spending too much money because the inner parent voice, which is the one that says should, is small here. So it's saying, well, I know you probably shouldn't drink that, but all right, go ahead. And the child's like, well, yeah, I'm going to drink it anyway. And the adult in this situation is kind of just along for the ride. Like, well, I mean, I feel good when the child feels good, so I guess we'll just have those 12 beers or whatever. That's one example, but there's a lot of imbalances that we see in transactional analysis, and I won't explain all those now in this overview. Dominant parent, dominant adult, dominant parent and child, and a limited suppressed child. As a transactional analyst, and we don't claim that as a professional title, we just in hypnotherapy, at least in our school, we utilize this understanding of the mind. We work to get a balance and healthy between all the ego states, but understand that no matter how good you do with that, and you know, that's great work to get a balanced and healthy. But beyond that, we'll move on in the slideshow. Transactions. When the ego states interact, then they're called transactions, and the big one is called the parent-child interaction, which is often, see if I have a good slide for that, the parent-child conflicts. There we go, sort of. This says more than just that. So here's the child on the left. The child gets hurt. When the child gets hurt enough, it starts getting scared of the hurt, and sometimes one good hurt causes fear right away. The hurt, scared child starts getting angry when there's enough hurt and fear. The anger is designed to destroy that which is attacking you. But what if it's the parent who's attacking you, right? Physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, again, all that stuff I mentioned. You turn the child, who's on the left there, turns the parent to try to feel better. But again, the parent could be the one causing the problem. But even if the parent wasn't the one causing the problem, the parent usually causes the problem by doing this. Shut up, you should be seen and not heard, right? Don't cry, you know, boys don't cry. Don't be afraid. How many times is your child, I'm speaking to those of you who are parents, how many times has your child been upset and you say, don't feel that way? That happens all the time. I mean, it's probably the most predominant form of parenting. Oh, don't cry. Don't be sad. Mommy, I'm scared. Don't be sad. Don't be scared. How many times do you tell someone not to feel their emotions? It's really prevalent. The box in the middle, cursor can show that. The box in the middle represents the suppression of those emotions. Child turns to parent to feel better. Parent says, don't feel that. That box in the middle is guilt. Okay, so like I said, we're going to get into guilt later, and this picture represents it. The box in the middle is guilt. Child says, I'm sad. Parent says, don't be sad. One way or another, verbal or nonverbal, for commission or omission, the parent makes you suppress your emotions in on themselves. When the emotions are really suppressed in on themselves, hurt, fear, anger, and not able to be resolved or released, transformed, then the result is anxiety and depression. Anxiety because you're terrified of what could come up inside of you, and depression because you're just really blocked. So there's the child ego state in most people over there on the left, and the parent ego state, which lives in your mind, right? When your inner child feels bad, meaning you have emotion, your inner parent can suppress those emotions so fast, you don't even stand a chance. Your adult self is like, what just happened? I was sad, but now I'm depressed. Because the sad came up and was trying to move through your system. But then the inner critic, and this is only from this model, will push the emotion back down. The adult, again, is the one who's just left going, why am I so miserable? Why am I so upset at everything? Why am I filled with triggers and buttons? Your triggers and buttons are all these things that are suppressed in the system. All right, so that's not, it's great insight if you haven't seen this model, but this is not news to most people who have been around the block. Human beings have an inner child who's hurt, scared, angry, and who feels guilty. And we know, if you live in your own head, you have an inner critic in there. So that's the parent-child conflict. Child says, I want or have emotions. Parent says, no, you shouldn't want. You shouldn't have those emotions. Again, the better your parenting style, your parents' parenting style was, maybe it's better. But I honestly, I have great parents. My parents are really awesome. And I don't feel like I was damaged by them. But they grew up, they were born in the 1950s, and they didn't have that kind of education or spiritual training or living in monasteries and ashrams. My parents didn't teach me this stuff. So my inner parent, while it was healthy, still needed to learn how to deal with my emotions properly, needed to know not to suppress my emotions, needed to know not to act out on my emotions. So there's still, no matter how good your parents are, there's still a lot of work that could occur internally. Now, level confusion. What happens when, I talked about this a little, when spirit takes on the human experience, however that happens, dropping in, incarnating, growing out of the earth, whatever, but you're having the human experience. Level confusion says that spirit forgets who it is, and in sacred geometry, the spirit is a circle. The square represents matter, or we could just say here the body, but the square is very much the physical plane or the physical body. When spirit identifies with the physical body, it thinks it is a physical body, and it, like I said, it forgets who it is. So if you say to this being, who, once you fully come in, who are you? The belief systems reflect what happened to the body. And I said that already. So you forget your spirit and you're like, well, I'm bad. I'm stupid. I'm unlovable. I'm different. I'm alone. Or if the body is not attractive, you might start saying, I'm ugly. Instead of I'm gorgeous spirit, I'm pure light and love, I'm pure beauty, you start speaking as if you're the body. This is the cause of all psychosomatic illness. It's a really powerful thing to understand, level confusion. You don't speak as if you're spirit. You speak as if you're a body. That is ego. You don't say, I am pure love. You say, I'm unlovable. You don't say, I'm one with everything. You say, I'm alone. Now, a lot of people, who might be listening to this have trained yourself to start identifying more as spirit. Yet again, until the complete level of these very deep enlightenment stages we hear about in the spiritual traditions, until those are occurring, it's important to be humble about just how immersed in the human experience we are, meaning just how immersed in ego we are. This has lots of stuff in it. I'll touch on this very briefly. I'm looking at the clock and we'll finish in about 15 minutes. Avidya in Sanskrit, all right, let's start with the title, the klesh. Klesh is that which causes suffering, and the yogis discovered about 5 major klesh. The first is avidya klesh. It's not knowing who you are. It's forgetting who you are. Asmita klesh is thinking you're something else, where here spirit is going to think that it's a body and everything that goes with the body, all the emotions and the mind. Rag is to hold on to things that make the human feel better, and dvesh is to push things away. It's aversion. The problem with clinging and aversion is you're living in a changing world. You can't hold on to everything that makes you feel good because it goes away. It's what the Buddha or Buddhism talks about, impermanence, right? And trying to cling to that which is impermanent. And it's a great cause of suffering, but we can't go into it too much now. Avinya Vesh is fear of death. Not just bodily death, because you think you're a body and now you think you can die, but fear of egoic death. And that's why, talk like this for some people could be kind of disturbing, because like, well, but who am I then? And what's going to happen? Remember, the ego is defensive. It's very afraid of the one who is pointing out it's wrong, it's illusory, it's insane, it's bass backwards about everything that it believes. Spirit is sane, but the ego is really insane. And it is terrified of death of the body and egoic death. And yet it believes that the way to solve all your problems is to die. When you look close enough in your mind in meditation, you'll find that there is a desire for death. In some of our hypnotherapy work, in analytical hypnotherapy, we acknowledge what's called the unconscious death urge. Never underestimate that the ego's solution to all your problems is death. And obviously it doesn't work. Death doesn't solve anything. All right, so how do we get it all to spirit? Then the first thing you have to do is you do have to balance the ego states. You have to get that inner child really healthy and happy. You clear all the negative beliefs, all the negative emotions. You bring it to the core state of peace, love, light, bliss. The parent ego state needs to be raising your self-esteem, teaching you healthy boundaries, teaching you assertiveness. It needs to, it's like the way a good parent would be is letting the child do what they want to do and just keeping them safe. Like the child wants to run across the street and you keep them from running across the street. You don't scream at them and tell them they're bad and horrible, they're sinners for wanting to run across the street. Right? When you speak to a child that way, and people do, it develops that voice of the negative inner critic in your head. So you want the inner parent to be just the best possible parent you can imagine. And again, we do that in the minds of our clients. When we reframe childhood memories, we don't just paint pretty pictures. I heard a graduate recently do this when I was working with, and I discovered a graduate was changing memories by just painting the picture pretty. Well, they're being nice to you now. It's hard to explain, but we don't just bring in unicorns and fairies and gold dust and say, okay, open the windows and bring in lots of light. You've got to transform these relationships in the subconscious. And again, that's what interpersonal hypnotherapy is all about. Not looking for memories, not symptoms, not emotions, not beliefs, which are all important, but the relationships themselves. Specifically, child-parent in that conflict. And then the adult becomes the mediator of the conflict. The adult is nice to the child, to the parent. Everybody's just friendly and getting along. It's like a healthy, happy family. And most people didn't grow up with that. Once the subconscious is brought to that, then we can guide the client to spirit. But what's happening when we do that, but nobody's going to resist, is we're actually dissolving those ego states. Because the child's so happy, you say, what would feel better? And he's like, I just want to be one with the light. Parent, what would feel better? One with the light. Adult, what would feel better? One with the light. Now, client, who are you? I am the light. You don't need 3 parts of your being saying, I am light. You are light. But again, how many people, when you ask them that question, who are you? You're not going to hear, I'm pure spirit, I'm pure light. And if you heard it, you might be hearing the spiritual ego saying what it read in a book, what it studied in its religion. But it's not necessarily living from that or acting from that. When we're truly there, the ego has been transformed. And we don't need to have, caring for our inner child in the same way. I have an inner child, like I know that part of my being really well, but it's not some other separate being. It's just the childlike, joyful, playful, fun part of me. And he's happy and he loves his Winnie the Pooh. But he's not like some separate little thing disconnect from the whole of my being. And there's an inner parent, a voice that knows, okay, we're not going to eat that whole pizza, that knows, okay, we're going to have healthy biorhythms and go to sleep at the right time. We're going to sleep through the whole night and wake up at a desired time. That's just keeping the self in alignment, but it's not some separate conflicting thought. When my inner parent says, all right, it's 10 o'clock. Let's start to wind it down. We're going to be asleep by 11. My inner child says, okay, cool. And my inner adult's like, good, that's smart. All right, so it's just clear and balanced. But really, we don't want to live as if that's who we are, three different parts who have to talk to each other. So if I want to just decide I'm going to wind down at 10 o'clock, be asleep by 11, there's just one whole person who makes that decision, and there's no conflict or anything getting in the way. And that's fortunately true, because I've been sleeping really good lately. All right, what else do I have? So transpersonalization, beyond bringing all the ego states to a wholeness and then being a whole and clear, the real aim of interpersonal hypnotherapy, and some concluding thoughts, then we can open for discussion if you guys have anything you want to share here or ask. Once the client has been brought back to that space of spirit, then really there's not much else to do. It doesn't happen in just one session, depending on how separate they felt. It can be many, many, many sessions. And then most likely your client is far from done with their spiritual growth, after they're done working with you. But ideally, you've set them on the path of knowing what's truly valuable, right? Knowing how to tap into that. So I empower my clients and students and everybody I possibly can with good meditation teachings that help to meditate directly in spirit. On YouTube now, I posted my meditations on higher consciousness recordings for free. So you can just Google that, Matthew Brownstein, Meditations on Higher Consciousness on YouTube. And there's one long talk, about an hour, and 4 really powerful meditations that guide you into spirit. So if we're not empowering our clients with the ability to tap into this, then I don't feel like we're doing them as much as a service as we could. Now, some people come in, they just want to stop smoking. Okay, that's it. But anybody who comes in for any longer term, deeper work, I believe should be empowered with not only self-hypnosis, but some kind of meditation technique that lets them start to focus on spirit. So again, my peace under all circumstances teachings, the meditation in higher consciousness that are online, the whole online monastery.com website now, the Anahat meditation system, and so much of our school's training is designed to guide people to spirit, which again is a right here now experience, and then help them to tap into that more and more each day. So the predominant identity speaks from spirit, right? I am love, I am peace. It's not some ego trip, it's just who you are. And we don't necessarily use the words, but we just live from there. And the beauty is when you meditate, when you fall asleep at night, that's there, right? You're whole and complete and at peace. And that's the real goal of the work. But again, miracles occur from functioning from this space. And so here's probably a final slide about integration. When you as spirit are having the human experience, the square represents matter or human, but notice it's not what's running the show. The body is just a vehicle. If anything, really, it's just a communication device. I use this to teach. I use this to, that's really it. For spirit, the body doesn't have all that much of a purpose, right? You're not invested in the things in the world anymore, but we are here with a mission. We are here to heal. And with COVID-19, I like to say, like, this is what we trained for, right? There's horrible things happening in the world right now. And those of us who are coming from spirit can be a huge part of the solution. So in this picture, you don't have body or ego, emotions, or pain running your life. Spirit runs your life, and spirit is love, therefore spirit is compassion, and it's here to be of service. So, and the deepest integration you can see in that glyph, but I'll encourage you to go to onlinemonastery.com to learn more about that. And that brings us to why we founded this association. All right, I'm gonna go back to the screen. And thank everybody for being here. If you have any questions you're sharing, I know that was largely lecture, but I'm still fully here for you. Every Sunday night at 7, we'll be doing the Anahat meditation system. So type any questions you have. I'm just giving you a moment to do that while I say what I'm saying now. Every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, I'll be taking everybody through the Anahat meditation system. So check out onlinemonastery.com. Our next hypnotherapy training starts June 24th, 2020. We are able to still deliver our training even with COVID because we're 70% online. And the in-house practicals are just being postponed, but our training takes almost a year to go through anyway, at least 9 months. So by that time, we're going to have solutions to how to be close to each other again, one way or another. So I'm very optimistic that we can keep creating hypnotherapists. So next training starts June 24th online and predominantly in Tampa. And then we're working to continue to open in Santa Barbara. So with that said, Somebody said, thank you so much. What an amazing session. Thank you. I'm not saying your names because we're recording. Someone said, you mentioned a book to read. I missed the name of the book. Do you remember which book? I mentioned my book, Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. I mentioned my book, Peace Under All Circumstances. I think that's it. Maybe somebody else might remember. We'll be signing up for Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. See you tomorrow. Good job. Hello to you. I'm not saying names, but hi. Yeah, awesome. A lot of our graduates just don't realize what's in there. You really want to go through that training. It makes things so much better. And honestly, as a professional, you make more money when you're better. And you'll be a much better hypnotherapist, not just better in getting results, but better in getting people into the core state, into these states of spirit awareness. And when that happens, you just have people coming in the door. I'm usually on a waiting list. When I was in private practice, I was in a waiting list for 2 or 3 months usually. And that's only 2 or 3 months because I would cut back on my advertising and save money. But if I wanted to be on a waiting list for 6 months, I could easily do that when I was in full-time practice. So yeah, when you have these skill sets and your clients realize what you're doing, you get a lot more clients. And again, we can do some really good work online. I was resistant to it, I have to admit, but I've been doing a lot of Zoom sessions and I'm seeing really nice results. Only limited things I can do touching my client, but that's arguably not such a bad thing, especially now. All right, great. Someone said, thank you so much. Always grateful for your kind spirit and wonderful teachings. Thank you all. All right, great, and thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. If there's any last discussion themes, I am here for you. And I look forward to seeing everybody. We'll keep doing these Monday night classes for a while. I have interviews coming up. They're not scheduled yet. Well, they are, but they're not posted yet. Renee Brent, Orlando director, will be my guest on June the 1st. And Renuka R. June, our Hollywood director, will be my guest sometime in June. We haven't confirmed that yet. And then there'll be lots of other topics coming your way from Monday night classes. So every Monday at 7, we're here at the Country Community class, and every Sunday on onlinemonastery.com. But same meeting room, same link on Zoom. Okay, and I wish everybody a wonderful night. I will stop recording.